knew who it was because we were all facing front and the doors opened in the back. All of a sudden there was this complete hush because this mantle of the governorship entered the room. Awesome. This mantle of authority, the leader of the state, the top guy, entered the room. It's like, whoa, that was powerful. You could feel it. Now, you might not get that with every governor. You might not get that sense, or every whatever president or vice president or whatever, but we felt it there, and that taught me, what's my mantle? Do I have a mantle? Of course I have a mantle. I have a mantle where I work. I have a mantle at my home. I have a mantle in my neighborhood. I have a mantle here in this room. I have a mantle of authority that I need to recognize and exercise rightly. This isn't necessarily something you can touch and see and feel. Well, you can feel it. You can experience it, but you're not going to see it and look at it. So that told me, and yes, you, and every one of us in here has a mantle of authority, and we need to figure out what that's about and how to exercise it. That's a huge lesson. So you are a focal point of influence. Maybe just in any conference I go to, somebody once said, you go to 2-3 day conferences, or you can go to a 3-hour session, you get all this stuff thrown at you, you get all these topics and all these points and all these quotes and all these videos. It's like, what are you going to remember and take away from this? So whatever registers, maybe it's just 1 or 2 things, or maybe it's an overall concept of what you heard. Take that 1, 2 things or overall concept and focus on that and do something with it. Because if you don't, 3 days from now it's going to be gone, possibly. So any conference you go to, I would go to conferences and take page after page after notes. You come out of these conferences with 10, 15 pages of notes. What do you do with all this written stuff? Back before I was bringing a laptop and recording it, even still, what do I do with a whole file full of information, facts and statements? What do I do with all that? Well, I go through that and I highlight the specific points that really interested me. And I said, I'm going to work on that. Might be one thing out of this whole conference, whatever it is, that I'm going to focus on. So do something with it. So we talked about transform yourself to success, be a lifelong learner, be a focal point of influence. Now, enter new territory, do something different. I don't have the article with me that's referred to here. Enter new territory, do something different. Don't limit yourself with routine stereotypes. Cross borders to discover new opportunities. I'll tell you 2 stories. I was on a board, international board of facilities people. We had the Northeast region, the Southern region, the Central region, the Western region, and the Southwest region. And I was on the board for the Northeast region. And the other 2 regions in the West were collaborating on a conference. They did a conference, they collaborated together. And I took a trip from the Eastern Conference down to the South Conference and learned some amazing things. I met some great people. And I went back to the board and said, why don't we do something with them? Why don't we collaborate with them on something? Because they've got some things that we need, and we got some things they need. I was hit with resistance, just flat out resistance. I'm like, why? And they said, what are we going to get out of it? We're successful here. We're making money in our conferences. And they said, what are we going to get out of it? We're going to give away our thoughts and our ideas. And I said, well, after much discussion, basically it ended, you're never going to find out. Because you're not going to enter new territory. You're not going to even explore what's on that moon like he did. And that's where I mentioned in the beginning of this, where my collaboration with Dave Romeo, a man who does similar things that I do, but we don't do the same things and we do things differently. We collaborated and now we're here. He's benefiting, I'm benefiting, you're benefiting. I've been to his conferences, he's been to mine. We're learning. We are part of the few like you are that have risen to a certain level, that are doing something that's impacting and changing the world. Enter new territory. And here, I'll give you a simple thing too. Here's a simple story. When I started to think about this, it was the first talk I did. Transform your atmosphere, do something different. I said, okay, every day at lunch I used to go out and take a walk. I'd go out the front door, I'd go up 2nd Street, and I'd go around down Italian Lake, I'd come back, and I'd do my 30, 40-minute walk, come back to the office. Same route every day. Same route every day. What am I doing this for? And you're telling people to do something different. So I did something different. I said, well, this time I'm going to go up this alley. I go up this alley, and in this backyard, this little backyard that was half the size of this room, this little backyard, but it had the biggest tree in it I ever saw in my life. The trunk had to be this, at least, in a backyard in the city of Harrisburg. The biggest tree I've ever seen in my life. Not just a nature thing. Not a big deal, but it's something I never forgot. I even later went up and took a picture of it because it was so impressive. Then I went down the alley and over and up another street, and I ran into a postal worker who was getting the mail out of his truck and packing his bag. And since my dad had worked 30-plus years and retired from the post office, I stopped and talked to this guy. And I says, hey, what's up? My dad used to work for the post office. And he said to me, for some reason out of the blue, something about, yeah, I wish we had leaders that knew how to lead us. Why did he tell me this? And then I said, well, I probably first prefaced it with, oh yeah, my dad was a carrier supervisor well before his time, so he didn't know. My dad supervised carriers. But then out of the blue, this guy says, yeah, we need good leadership. What was he going through at the moment that we didn't get into because we just met? So we exchanged words and I moved on. But doing something as simple as changing my path and taking a lunch showed me two things. It showed me a tree and it showed me a man that was in need of something. So it created an opportunity for me to help meet that need. Do something different. Why is it that we travel in these circles in the same city, people I've graduated from high school with, and we never run into each other? Never. They might live 2 blocks from me, 4 blocks from me, and I never knew it. Because we're going in the same circles, we need to change that so that we can create, we need to literally walk somewhere different, go someplace different. Don't avoid collaboration. Go to a different networking event. Do something different literally. Talk to somebody you've never talked to before or you never thought you would. Another situation was, rather than take the steps, I took the elevator one day and there was a lady in it that she had a name similar to another. I thought she was related to somebody else. But I talked to her. We shared on the elevator. I got off at the 2nd floor. If I would have taken the steps, I would have never met her. Never had that engagement. Do something different. When things stay the same, we maintain traditional practices, whether good or bad. Some practices are good, but some limit learning and progress. We need to identify, we have traditions just that we do, just by when we get up, what we do, how we process things, our schedules, what we do by habit. If you videoed yourself while you were shaving every day, I bet you'd see the same thing, the same number of strokes, and you're doing it without even knowing it. So do something different. Break tradition. Traditions are good and bad. Good family traditions are great. Some traditions are bad. Some churches hang on traditions they shouldn't be hanging on to. Some traditions should be held on to. But traditions can limit you. You will always be where you've always been if you always go where you've always gone. That's going in circles. You will always be where you've always been if you always go where you've always gone. If you do the same things all the time, you're never going to break out of that circle. Variation of that, you'll always be where you've always been if you always do what you've always done. Doing the same things over and over. Go through boundaries, go through walls. Take a risk. It might be a risk. Take a risk, collaborate with somebody that appears to be, you know, a good partnership. Take that risk, and that risk can dissipate into some kind of success. And a lot of people aren't going to do it. And it's hard to watch people do that. It's hard to watch the board say, what's in it for us? We're not doing that. And we'll never find out what success could have resulted from that collaboration. You know, and it's just being an example. It's like to draw people out. Just like Dave said, affecting the most people with the most good, touching the most people. And also giving them an indication of, they might say, wow, I'm not there yet, but maybe I can do that. If he can do it, I can do it. If Andrew Beal can do it, I can do it. If Tim Sanders can do it, I can do it. So we've covered transform yourself, be a lifelong learner, be a focal point, enter new territory. That's a repertoire, all of that. That's dynamic. A lot of different things, a lot of different speeds. Sustainability, profile point number 5, sustaining leadership through difficult times. There's a tunnel. A guy's walking through. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Those ribs could be all kinds of situations he's involved with, but he's going through. Don't stay in difficult times. Get through. They are normal and expected. Guess what? You know, isn't that important? It's like that climbing the mountain thing I showed you. You know, I never expected it to be. Well, it's going to be like this. It just is. That's the world. That's the way it is. That's the way people are. We're in tough economic times. Politicians are politicians. And it's not a good situation. And what are we going to do with it? And how are we going to deal with it personally? Expect it. Expect that, you know, it's not a happy time. Mothers pass away. Mother-in-laws pass away. People get sick. Not that you're happy about it, expecting it, but it happens. So it's like, it's not unusual. It doesn't make you different. It doesn't make you less than the rest because your times might be tougher than somebody else's times. Like I told you before, I'm going through right now some of the biggest challenges I ever faced in my whole life. And I tell you, sometimes it's tough getting through, saying, oh man, I don't want to do this anymore. But then I haven't even read the book, but what's the book say? It's too soon to quit. Joe Paterno is an example. It's too soon to quit. Can I have that mindset? It's too soon to quit, even though these challenges are so huge, I don't know how I'm going to get through them. It's too soon to quit. Stay through, getting through. When I developed this talk, I first named it. Now, each one of these, as we go through these, is basically a 1-hour session. So this 1-hour session on sustaining leadership through difficult times, I first named it In Difficult Times. You know, I thought, that's not good. I don't want to stay in these things. I want to get through these things. I want to get through the difficult times, which become the growing times, and they become the best of times because that's where we really learn and really survive and really teach others how to survive. Life stops for no one. That ties right in. I create sayings for me. This is one I came up with a few years ago when I developed this. Life stops for no one. Challenges don't stop for you. They don't stop for you. They don't stop for you. They're there. They're going to be there. They're coming. They're expected. When I was growing up in the 50s, loved them locomotives. I was 5 years old. I lived in a house down on 17th Street. I'd hear the whistle blowing. I'd run out the door and run down to the bridge. I'd stand on the bridge while the steam and the soot and everything came tooting through, and I'd stood there and loved those locomotives. Well, I likened that to, found this picture of 3 trains coming down the tracks, and I'm standing in front of them. What am I going to do? 3 challenges coming at me. What am I going to do? Trains coming at me. What am I going to do? I got myself, my own issues. I got my home life. I got my work life, challenges. Now there's happy things. I mean, this might all sound morbid, but I'm just focusing on challenges, sustaining that leadership ability through these tough times. And then there's the politics. Man, that's a challenge. Are they ever going to stop taxing us? How much can they take from us and we're still going to survive? Is it ever going to get any better? Maybe not. Maybe not. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? What am I going to do with it? What are we going to do with it? Are we going to stay in the morbid side of this thing and say, I just give up, I quit? Are we going to press on and do what we need to do, continue to inspire people that are going to become motivated to do what they need to do? So, in all of that, are you able to drive a stake in the ground that you're going to be grounded to and founded to, good, solid, sound principles that's going to get you through the tough times? And I liken that to this. This guy driving an Army guy driving a tent peg and a mallet. Tent peg with a mallet. We were in New Orleans in 08. I'm getting the years mixed up here. In 08, my son Nick, the guy I had the quote from, was hit by a trolley. Freshman year in college at Loyola University in New Orleans. He was hit by a trolley, brain injury. They got him to the hospital within the first hour. They saved his life. 6 weeks later, long story short, he was back at school. Well, he's back at school with a titanium plate. Graduated 4 years later. Of course, 4 years later, went through some mental challenges that we got called down for. They were having some struggles because of the workings in there weren't working like they used to work. And I was on the way to, I had to go to Chicago to give this talk, Sustaining Leadership Through Difficult Times. I was like, man, how am I going to get there? In the midst of this, I got this commitment to do this talk. Well, it worked out. Bottom line, it worked out. But in New Orleans, we stopped in this bookstore, and this is what I found. Talk about destiny. I found this book. Abraham Lincoln driving a tent peg with a mallet. Now that was after I found this on the internet. I know it's a little small there, but look at the similarity, which told me, are you in the right place or not?